The screaming started before the lights even turned on. A metal door slammed somewhere deep inside Rikers Island, and a young inmate shouted for help. Fast, desperate, like he knew something terrible was coming. Officers ran, boots hitting the floor, radios crackling with panic. Someone yelled, "We've got a man down." And then everything went silent. Too silent. The kind of silence that feels dangerous. And in the middle of that silence, a single word echoed through the hallway. Browder. The name that had already shaken New York City. The name that would soon set off investigations, protests, and one of the biggest questions in American justice. But at this moment, inside America's most violent jail, no one knew how dark the next minutes would get, or who wouldn't make it out alive. Just as an officer reached for the cell door, a shadow moved inside. Then a loud crash. The screen cuts to black. This is Rikers Island. And this is where everything began. The nightmare didn't start with sirens or detectives. It started years earlier, when 16-year-old Khalif Browder from the Bronx was picked up by police on a quiet spring night. He had been walking home with friends. A man told officers that Khalif had stolen his backpack. No evidence. No real witnesses. No clear motive. Still, Khalif was arrested. His bail was set at an amount his family couldn't pay. And so he was sent to Rikers Island, the huge jail complex in New York City, sitting in the East River between Queens and the Bronx, where danger lived in every hallway. The ride to Rikers felt long, cold, and confusing. Khalif kept asking when he would get to tell his side of the story. Officers didn't answer. The van rolled across the narrow bridge, and the gates opened. Khalif had no idea he was entering one of the most violent jails in America. A place filled with reports of assaults, corrupt guards, and injuries that were never written down. A place investigators from Washington, D.C. had warned about for years. Inside, the noise hit him first. Yelling, doors slamming, radios buzzing, officers arguing, inmates banging on metal beds. Every sound felt sharp, like it cut the air. Khalif was pushed through intake, given clothes that didn't fit, and assigned to a dorm where fights broke out almost daily. People told him to keep his head down. But even that wasn't enough at Rikers. There was an older inmate named Marcus Lewis, a tall man from Brooklyn who had been inside for months. He tried to help Khalif on the first night. He whispered, "Stay close to the wall. Never stand in the middle of the room. And don't trust anybody." Khalif nodded, trying to hide how scared he was. Hours later, the lights went off. A quiet moment, a low. But lows never lasted long in Rikers. The next day, a group of inmates, boys not much older than him, blocked the hallway. One pushed Khalif. Another demanded his food. A third asked who he rolled with. When Khalif didn't answer fast enough, fists flew. He hit the floor. Pain exploded in his ribs. Officers finally rushed in, but instead of separating everyone, they pepper-sprayed the entire group. Khalif couldn't breathe. His eyes burned. He was dragged out coughing, confused, terrified. This was the first assault, not the last. Days turned into weeks. Court dates got delayed. Paperwork went missing. Reports didn't match timelines. Detectives couldn't locate the man who accused him. Evidence didn't appear. Khalif kept saying the same thing. "I didn't do anything." But the walls of Rikers kept him inside. And the jail's problems, understaffing, broken systems, officers stretched thin, kept getting worse. Then came the night everything changed. A fight broke out in the day room. Officers ran in, trying to take control. But in the chaos, someone slammed a chair. Someone else grabbed a metal tray. An officer slipped. Inmates screamed. Alarms went off. Khalif tried to back away, but a swing meant for someone else hit him hard in the face. He fell against a table, blood dripping down his chin. The noise grew louder, and when officers finally dragged the fighters apart, one guard looked down at Khalif, stunned, as if he was seeing something he was never trained to handle. He shouted into his radio, "We need a medic, now." But the medic didn't arrive. Instead, two officers grabbed Khalif by the arms, and they pulled him toward the solitary confinement wing. The door slammed behind him. The lock clicked. That's when the real nightmare began. The steel door of solitary confinement shut with a heavy thud, the kind that made the walls tremble. Khalif blinked in the dim light. The cell was barely bigger than a closet. A metal bed, a toilet, a small, scratched window that showed nothing but gray. His head still throbbed from the blow he took in the day room. His cheek felt swollen. His ribs ached every time he breathed. But the worst pain came from knowing he had been dragged here as punishment for getting attacked. Minutes crawled by, then hours. The hallway outside went quiet. Too quiet. Solitary at Rikers Island wasn't just a place to isolate someone. It was a place to forget them. Officers sometimes walked by, but they didn't always stop. Some didn't even look inside. Reports later showed that many rounds were skipped. Cameras failed. Paperwork disappeared. But right now, Khalif had no idea about any of that. He only felt the silence pressing on his ears. A clang echoed down the corridor. Heavy boots. An officer paused at his door. "You'll be here until they finish the investigation," he said, voice cold. "Don't ask how long. We don't know." Then he walked away, leaving Khalif with 100 questions and not a single answer. This was the low. A quiet moment. But quiet at Rikers was never safe. Several days later, during meal delivery, an inmate named Trevor Jones was being escorted past the solitary cells. Trevor had been in and out of Rikers for years, always on charges that moved slowly through the courts. He knew the jail too well, knew the guards, knew the blind corners, and he knew the sounds of trouble. As he passed by, he heard coughing from Khalif's cell, deep, rough, painful. Trevor whispered, "Kid, you okay in there?" Khalif stepped closer to the door. "I can't breathe right. My chest hurts." Trevor frowned. "You need a doctor." But before he could say anything else, an officer barked, "Keep moving." Trevor was shoved down the hallway, his voice fading. For a moment, everything slowed. But only for a moment. The next morning, the jail erupted again. A loud alarm blared across the entire complex. Officers shouted. Radios buzzed with frantic messages. Someone in another unit had been stabbed during a fight over stolen commissary items. Detectives were called. Supervisors rushed through the corridors. Chaos spread like wildfire. In the confusion, rounds in the solitary wing were delayed. Some cells weren't checked for long stretches of time. Khalif sat alone, heartbeat pounding. He heard yelling somewhere far away. Then the hallway fell silent again. That silence wasn't normal. It felt wrong. Hours later, a different officer stopped by. His tone was gentler. Maybe he had a son Khalif's age. Maybe he felt guilty about the broken system he worked in. "You holding up?" he asked. Khalif nodded, but it wasn't true. His mental state was slipping. Hope felt like it was leaking out of him, drip by drip. "They're trying to get your case moving," the officer said. "But things are slow. Slow." That word felt like a punch. Weeks passed. Court dates were postponed again. Evidence still hadn't shown up. Witnesses were nowhere to be found. Reports contradicted one another. Investigators from the Department of Justice were preparing a new review of Rikers Island, focusing on excessive force, inmate injuries, and officer misconduct. But none of that helped Khalif, sitting alone in a concrete box, waiting for a trial he couldn't reach. Then one afternoon, everything shifted again. A loud argument erupted between two officers near the solitary block. Their voices were sharp, angry. Something about understaffing, overtime, and no backup. Their dispute grew louder until one officer stormed off, leaving the other to finish the rounds alone. That meant mistakes. That meant skip checks. And skip checks at Rikers could turn dangerous fast. Only minutes later, a scream echoed down the wing. Not from Khalif, from another cell. An inmate was banging on his door, shouting for help. "He's not moving," the man yelled. "Hey, somebody get over here." His voice was shaking. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The officer rushed to the cell. "Step back," he ordered the witness. He fumbled for his radio. "We have an emergency, possible collapse, need medical now." As he called it in, the inmates in nearby cells started shouting. Some in panic, some in fear, Some because they knew exactly what delays in Rikers' medical response could mean. Then, another voice cut through the noise. Caliph's. He yelled, "Someone help him. He's not breathing." The officer looked down the hall, confused, torn between two emergencies. He radioed again, voice cracking. "We need backup in solitary. Multiple issues." But no backup came. For long seconds, everything froze. Then a second scream erupted, louder, sharper, closer. Coming from a cell, just 3 doors down from Caliph. Something terrible was happening. And the officer, standing in the middle of the hallway, realized he no longer had control of the unit. Before he could move, before he could call again, before he could even understand what he was hearing, another cell door slammed. Hard. Too hard. Like someone inside had fallen. Or been pushed. Or worse. And that's exactly where the danger shifted next. The slam of that cell door shook the entire solitary wing. Dust drifted from the ceiling. The officer froze, staring at the door that had just crashed shut. For a moment, no one spoke. No one even breathed. Then the shouting began again, louder, frantic, echoing through the narrow hallway. Something terrible had happened inside that cell, and everyone knew it. Caliph pressed his ear to the door. His chest tightened. His ribs still hurt, but fear pushed the pain aside. A voice trembled from the cell 3 doors down, the same one that slammed moments earlier. He's on the floor," the inmate whispered. "He's not moving." The officer finally snapped back into action. "Step away from a door," he ordered, though he couldn't see inside. His voice shook. He fumbled for his keys, hands trembling. "Control, I need medical. I need backup. Now." He shouted it again, louder this time. But the radio only crackled. No answer. The jail was stretched thin. Another stabbing in a different building, a fight in the infirmary, and an officer injury near the intake area. Rikers Island was in chaos. The door clicked open. The officer pushed it slowly. Inside, the inmate lay on the floor, eyes half closed, barely breathing. A bruise covered the side of his head. A metal water cup lay near his hand, bent out of shape. The officer stepped inside, yelling down the hallway, "If anyone can hear me, get a stretcher." Caliph felt his heartbeat hammering against his chest. He wasn't the only one scared. Even hardened inmates in the nearby cells fell silent. They had seen too many emergencies end badly. Too many medical calls arrive too late. Too many cases where the timeline never matched the reports. Finally, after long, painful minutes, 2 more officers arrived, pushing a rattling stretcher. They lifted the injured man carefully, rushed him down the hallway, and vanished around the corner. The echo of the wheels faded. The hallway grew quiet again. But the damage was already done. That night, something inside Caliph snapped. He sat on the cold floor, knees pulled to his chest, shaking. A kid who hadn't been convicted of anything. A kid waiting for a trial that never came. A kid who kept getting swallowed by a system he didn't understand. "I want to go home," he whispered. "Please, someone just listen." He wasn't asking for mercy, just fairness. Days passed, then weeks. And then one morning, after almost 3 years of waiting, the news finally came. An officer opened Caliph's door, his expression softer than usual. "Pack up," he said. "You're being released." Caliph stood still, confused. "Released? Why?" The officer looked down, ashamed. They dropped the case. 3 words. 3 simple, cruel words. They had dropped the case. After all the waiting. After all the fights. After all the solitary confinement. After all the harm. After 3 years in one of the most violent jails in America, the charges were gone. No trial. No evidence. Nothing. Caliph walked out of Rikers Island with emptiness in his eyes. New York City felt huge, bright, loud. Cars honked on the streets. People laughed on the sidewalks. Kids ran in the parks. Life kept moving. But inside his mind, Rikers hadn't let go. He tried to go back to school. Tried to smile again. Tried to be the same kid he was before. But every loud sound made him jump. Every closed door made him panic. Every quiet moment reminded him of solitary. He told his mother, I feel like I'm still locked up." She hugged him tightly, but the fear didn't fade. Soon, reporters began to talk about his case. Detectives reviewed timelines. Investigators reopened old reports. Federal documents revealed long histories of excessive force, corruption, and staff shortages at Rikers. The story spread across the United States. People from New York to California asked how something like this could happen to a teenager. Protests rose in the Bronx. Lawmakers held meetings in Manhattan. The name Kalief Browder became a symbol, one that forced the country to look at Rikers Island through a harsh, unforgiving lens. Years later, the city announced its plan. Rikers Island would close. They would build smaller, safer jails. They would overhaul the system. They promised no one else would suffer like Kalief. But promises can't erase the past. And one quiet afternoon, overwhelmed by everything he had lived through, Kalief Browder took his own life. His death shook New York City. It shook the nation. It brought detectives, lawyers, reporters, and community leaders together. People across the country demanded change. Investigations deepened. Reports were published. And the truth became impossible to ignore. Rikers Island was exposed. Exposed for the violence. Exposed for the corruption. Exposed for what it did to a boy who never got his day in court. Kalief's story became a turning point, one that forced America to confront a question that still hangs in the air. How many more lives must break before the system bends? And that is the final chapter of Rikers Island, but not the final chapter of justice.